So, hello and welcome to Occupied Thoughts, a podcast brought to you by the Foundation for Middle East Peace. I'm Hilary Rantisi, a 2025 Fellow at the Foundation for Middle East Peace. Today is June 27th, 2025, and I'm so excited to be in conversation today with Suad Amiry and Cherien Dabis, two trailblazing Palestinian women that I've had great admiration for. Today, we'll be talking about Palestinian cultural production, especially at this moment, but also hearing about plans for the adaptation of Suad's 2003 novel, Sharon and My Mother-in-Law, that a film that will be directed by Cherien. So before we jump in, I wanted to just give a very brief introduction of both our guests and apologize that these are very brief introductions. They will be more extensive bios included in the later as an attachment to the podcast. So Suad Amiry is a Palestinian writer and architect living in the West Bank town of Ramallah. She's the founder of the Riwaq Center for Architectural Conservation, founded in 1991. It's the first of its kind to work on the rehabilitation and protection of architectural heritage in Palestine. She's the author of many architectural and nonfiction books. Her book, Sharon and My Mother-in-Law, which we will be talking about soon, has been translated into 19 languages and was awarded the prestigious Viareggio Prize in Italy. And Amiry has 6 nonfiction books, the last of which is My Damascus and Mother of Strangers. Mother of Strangers is her last book. Cherien Dabis is a highly acclaimed and award-winning Palestinian American filmmaker and actress. And she forged a new genre of Arab American storytelling with her first feature, America, in 2009. Then she made her acting debut in her second feature, May in the Summer, in 2013. And she directed and starred in her latest film, third feature film, All That's Left of You, which just premiered at the 2025 Sundance Film Festival. So we will also be hearing about that shortly. Dabis has also directed episodes on hit television series such as Hulu's Rami and Netflix Ozark. And in 2022, she became the first Palestinian Emmy nominee for her groundbreaking dialogue-free episode of Hulu's comedy, Only Murders in the Building. So her acting credits include Netflix Mo, Amazon Prime's Fallout, and Tariq Saleh's Eagles of the Republic, which was in competition at this year's Cannes Film Festival. I am so honored to be in conversation with both of you. And there's so much more that we could be sharing about all your accomplishments, but I wanted to use our time this morning. First, I think maybe we can start, Cherien, with you sharing about your latest film, All That's Left of You. It will be hopefully coming to the US soon, but can you tell us more about the film and maybe describe it and we can start our conversation there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the sort of short synopsis of the story is that the film opens with a Palestinian teenager getting kind of swept up into a West Bank protest. And of course, we later learn that it's the 1988, First Intifada. And then we flash to the face of his mother, many, many decades later, who basically tells us that she's going to recount the story of what happened to her son at that protest. But to tell his story, she has to start with his grandfather's story. And so we flash back to 1948 and we learn the family story. So it's really a multi-generational, sweeping family saga that is the origin story of Palestinians. And by telling the story of one Palestinian family and the hope and courage and relentless struggle that they endured for decades, the film really tells the story of every Palestinian family. I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed not to see yourself in the film as a Palestinian. But the film also is about family and it's about survival and the love that allows us to survive political tragedy and turmoil and personal loss. So it's a very universal story at the same time that it's really specific in that it's telling our story in a way that really has not ever been told.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think the intergenerational telling the whole story and how it impacts the family, and what I've been reading about first how you made the film and what your plans were and how they changed because of what's happening in Palestine because of the genocide, and you having to film in so many different countries, and everything is maybe is also a reflection of sort of the realities that everything is a challenge, that life is not, straightforward. Um,
Especially for Palestinians. It's really funny because I kind of say um, the movie lived what Palestinians live. The movie
yeah,
lived in exile, which is just very similar to so many, Palestinians experience. And so, yeah, it really, what we went through was quite remarkable. I arrived in Palestine in May of 2023 to start, work on the ground with my Palestinian crew. And I spent the summer working really hard on the movie. My key crew came. I had some foreign crew come. The rest of my crew came from, Germany and other places in October of 2023, early October of 2023. And we had already done so much work. We'd begun construction on our locations. We had amassed a giant warehouse of like beautiful, carefully curated props and set dressing from the 40s and the 70s and the 80s and all of the different time periods of the film. And we had just finished a tech recce, which is essentially when the director takes the entire crew to every location of the film and you talk
oh,
through all of the shooting plans. So as you can imagine, it was like 3 days of work where we traveled the entire country from, Jericho to Ramallah to Nablus to Haifa to Jaffa. We were all over the country, and literally the next day we woke up to what happened on October the 7th. So it was an unbelievably intense experience, of course. A few days later, we ended up having to evacuate. It became very clear we were not going to be able to shoot, and the foreign crew, of course, wanted to leave. They were scared. We evacuated to Jordan and then made our way to Cyprus, where we had to add weeks and weeks of prep and basically, kind of start over. We shot about, I would say, maybe 10% of the film in Cyprus, maybe a little bit more. Then we went to Jordan. We shot the majority of the film there in the Palestinian refugee camps in the north of Jordan.
yeah,
And then we ended up going to Greece and finishing the film there. So, and we found ways, like, we found subversive ways to still shoot in Palestine. We were
yeah,
still working with our crew there, trying to get, images, VFX, shoot maybe a scene or two remotely. It was very important to me to make a really authentic film because we've never seen urban Palestine in 1948. And the movie opens in
mm,
Jaffa in 1948. We've never seen urban Jaffa in 1948. And it was very exciting to my crew
yeah,
to get to recreate what was lost.
yeah,
The world hears about what we lost, but they don't know what we lost. They've never seen it. They've never felt it or experienced it. And I
yes,
really wanted that to feel authentic. I wanted people from Jaffa to watch the movie and feel like they got to go to Jaffa. And
yeah,
that's really how much in the details we were. And
well,
so what I'm really proud of is that indeed I've had Nakba survivors from Jaffa watch the movie and just really remember things that they forgot about, remember details, feel like they got to travel to Jaffa.
mhm,
And that for me is, that's just like so amazing to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's so beautiful. And I've been reading a little bit about the film. I can't wait to see it, but it's described as a love letter. I mean, clearly you've put so much love into creating this film, and I think it will come through to the audience. So, when should we expect to see it in the US?
We are planning to release it in the US this fall. So I don't
Okay.
know exactly when, but sometime October through December, you can expect that we'll be out in theaters and on
Wow.
or soon. So hopefully I'll be able to
Yeah.
announce it on
Yeah.
social media very soon, our exact
Yeah.
release.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, it's great you've been able to screen it in small ways, I guess, at the beginning, but I'm sure lots of people who are either Nakba survivors or their descendants will
Yeah,
resonate. It will resonate, and I think it's powerful, and maybe this is the right time for people who are also curious about the context
that's right.
and the history that touches every Palestinian life, every Palestinian family. So
That's
thank
right.
you for telling the story.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's the story of how we got here, certainly. And I feel like more Americans than ever want to know, like, how did this happen? Why are we here? It's the story that's been suppressed for so long. And when
yeah,
people see the film, we've been on the festival circuit, since Sundance. We've been to like a handful of other really great festivals. We've won some audience awards, which is for me the best award to win because it tells me that the movie's connecting with audience members.
yeah,
And yeah, I think there are a lot of people who are more curious than ever about the Palestinian side of this.
yeah,
Again, it's a story that we've not gotten to tell it, and people have not gotten to hear it. So I think
yeah.
that is
And in a way, it's amazing that that people still don't know the story. But I think all these mediums of telling our story are important, and filmmaking is a big one of them. So big,
absolutely.
yeah. I mean, so I don't know if you want to jump in here, but
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. I want to jump because I don't know if you're aware that my father is from Jaffa.
Oh,
Uh,
I think I did know that, Suad. You told me, but
yeah,
also
yeah,
mother of strangers in
yeah,
part.
mother of strangers. So what I want to say, even though I'm here to talk about Sharon and her mother-in-law, but I want to jump in and say how important the Nakba is, 1948. I think that people don't know, people in the world don't know what happened to the Palestinians in 1948. There
Right.
has been so much sympathy for what happened in Europe. It's that people did not see what was happening to the indigenous people of where the state of Israel was created. What happened to the 250,000 of people who my father is one of them.
yeah,
uh, People don't realize that, how does it feel for my father to go to Jaffa and find an Israeli family living there?
Mhm.
That story has not been told, even though now we are living a moment which is a very sad one concerning the genocide in Gaza. But I think people don't realize that 80% of the people who are in Gaza are in refugee camps that Israel kicked them out of their house the first time in 1948. And this will be the second or third, it depends if 67 also. So what I mean to say, thank you for the film, because really I always feel that we have failed somehow to talk about 1948. And I think that just generation, I tell you, you belong to a younger generation than I do. Our generation, have been
Mhm.
intimidated to sort of accept a political solution. And every time I wanted to talk about Jaffa, yeah, but Jaffa is part of Israel, then you don't want to recognize Israel and what have you. As if we had to cancel our story to
Yeah.
prove to the world that we are human beings. So I really think when I wrote Mother of Strangers, I felt this exact importance of 1948 and what it meant, how we become refugees forever,
Yeah.
forever. You know, people don't realize that we have lost our sea, we have lost our home, the garden, the kitchen, the piano, they make films about losing a painting. We have lost everything. And I think this generation, thank God, is being active culturally, in the movies, in the writing, in poetry. And I really have a big hope in the younger generation, not only the Palestinians, the Arabs, and also the Americans. And Mabruk for your young mayor, hopefully in the future in New York. That's a sign of the
Inshallah.
changes
Inshallah,
that will
inshallah.
happen. Okay, I stop here because, as you know, I can go on forever expressing my emotions. Thank you,
So
Cherien. Really,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
yeah,
I really can't wait for you to see the film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I am looking forward to seeing it, because also when I wrote this book, what I loved most is when young people told me that we saw Jaffa. We got to know the neighborhoods. So when you said that your Jaffa audience remembered the streets, the places, the cinemas, the cafes, really, it's so refreshing that it was difficult, I know. To write a book about Jaffa for me was a difficult one because I have to read so much to interview, because I was born in Damascus as a refugee family, and in Jordan I grew up. So I know how difficult it is to reconstruct a lost society, a lost city.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. But Jaffa has, I mean, it symbolizes so much for many of us. My family is from Lid, and which isn't far from Jaffa, and it was very connected. My grandfather and his brothers all worked in Jaffa, so they every day would go to Jaffa and come back to Lid. There's a strong connection among both cities, and the immense loss that I think our families have experienced, continues to resonate. Is exactly like Suad was saying. Um, and I think what's happening now in Gaza brings it all back, right?
Yeah.
It's not like any of us have forgotten
Right.
this, but we feel it much more in our bones. And
Yeah.
so I think it's an important story to keep telling and reviving in many forms and ways we can. And as I think of Suad, your book Sharon and My Mother-in-Law, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about it, but the connecting points between this moment and the idea of home and lots of home. And here you are in Ramallah, in a home that's doubly occupied in a way. But the meaning of home for Palestinians and what that means, I think, resonates through all the literature, I think, on Palestinian cultural production. You find the importance of home and what loss means. And so maybe that's sort of a nice way to connect to sort of talking about Sharon and My Mother-in-Law. And maybe Suad, can you tell us a little bit about it for those of the audience who have yet to read your book, which is amazing. And but tell us a little bit about it. And Cherien, you can jump in.
Yeah. Well, I must say, Sharon and My Mother-in-Law, the book has changed my life. First of all, I spent all my life being an architect, a conservation architect. And as you mentioned, I established Riwaq for the protection of cultural heritage. And also, I am partly dyslexic. So the last thing I expected in life is to be a writer. And but as the title says, Sharon and My Mother-in-Law, Sharon, ex-Prime Minister of Israel, and my mother-in-law, who was 91 years old, made a writer out of me, because in 2001, 2002, the Israelis reoccupied the occupied territories. They came to Ramallah and Bethlehem and many other cities. So I was stuck at home with my mother-in-law, who normally lives alone. She came to live with me. And I always joke saying that I ended up with two occupations, one inside the house and one outside the house. We had 13 sort of tanks in front of our house. And really, it was a very stressful period for me. And the only way I could survive that period, which is not the situation now, we'll talk about that later, but the only way I could survive that period is sit down every day at night and write emails to 5 close friends and my nieces. So one day I wrote about how my mother-in-law drove me crazy, and the other day I wrote about Sharon and her mother, Sharon, who destroyed our city and made our life difficult. And really, the book was sent to friends, and just one of them sent it to a publisher in Italy. And I receive a phone call, and then, it all starts from there. The publisher says, we want to write all world's rights, and I have no idea what world's rights are. I know as an architect, elevations, sections, plans, but world's rights have no idea. So anyway, the thing is, what was so amazing is that I have spent many years of my life studying architecture, working in architecture, teaching at Birzeit University. And here I am with a book that was meant as a joke, gets all the attention of the world, and I am invited in Sydney to talk about my mother-in-law. I am invited to New York to talk about my mother-in-law, and so on and so. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I have written other books later, but I should tell you that I never realized the power of a book until I wrote one by pure accident. And it reached so many people. And I think basically for 2 reasons, I may say, but you as a reader may have different opinion. One is that when we talk about the Middle East, Iraq, Palestine, Syria, people are tired and sad about what happened there. So for them to listen to your story, you have to put a little bit of humor and the human in it, both elements. So I think joking about the situation, which was my only way to deal with the trauma, people sort of appreciated it. The second one is about everyday life. You know, newspapers, televisions, when you have an explosion, or if you have one Israeli injured, or one Israeli killed, or one European killed, then you see it #1 news on the television. But when you have a nation who was 2 million people, 3 million people living under occupation, their land is being taken away, their 90% of their water is taken away, their olive trees are being burned, the food, not only now in Gaza, but for the last 17 years, they have closed Gaza and gave them food in portions, rations. So nobody writes about these things. And I felt that to tell the story of the voiceless, as it were, but at the same time, for me, it was important to show that Palestinians really want to live. We are not a nation that wants to die. We are Mediterraneans who love to dance and eat and stay late and fall in love and fall out of love and marry and divorce and make affairs and what have you. This was important for me to show, but at the same time, I was showing the banality of this aggressive occupation. I had to make a balance between being light so people can take the information, but at the same time to be very strict and very expressive when it came to the brutality of the Israeli occupation. I'll stop here.
Yeah, no, there's so much to unpack there. I think you showed the absurdity of life, which could, I mean, it just gets worse and worse and worse if we come to this day. But the importance of humor, I think, comes through over and over again as what has gravitated all the audiences and all the readers to reading Sharon and My Mother-in-Law. So I'm curious, Cherien, what your thoughts are and plans for seeing this in film form. We're very
You
excited
know,
for
it's
that.
funny because as the person who's like adapting the book, as Suad was talking, I took a couple of notes because I was like, oh, tanks in front of the house. And then I was like, oh, I forgot about that detail. Like just reminding myself, like taking notes as you said something else. Oh, occupation inside the house and outside the house. Um, no, it's so funny because after making I totally understand everything that Sarah just said about like really having to balance the heaviness of the situation with humor. And you know, my first two films were drama comedies. I got into filmmaking as someone who felt that politics was forced on me from the time that I was a child. Like I was forced to become politicized when I didn't want to as a kid. Like I didn't want from the moment I became conscious of myself to have to answer questions about what was happening over there. You know, I'm like, I'm 8. Why are you asking me this question? So I really appreciate humor so much. I think one of the first times I was like really blown away watching Palestinian cinema was watching Ilyas Liman because he
Mm.
really captures the absurdity of life
Yeah.
under occupation, and I just loved that. So I also approached, you know, my filmmaking, the first couple of movies I made with humor, like really wanting to find um, a funny way to talk about difficult things. And you know, my latest film that was a little bit it wasn't as appropriate. I'm making more of a drama in that film, though there are moments of humor and there is a lot of humanity and a lot of love and tenderness because you still have to balance the heaviness with love. You have to balance it with something other than, you know, you can't just make something that is asking people to cry the entire, you know, the entire time. So when I read Sharon and My Mother-in-Law, I just fell in love with the humor. It really there's scenes in there that I still remember, like Suad having a staring contest with a soldier, you know, or just like losing her shit, pardon my French, and going off on a soldier, you know, in a way that only a woman can get away with, by the way. Like only a woman like Suad, you know, certain people doing that, they might not get away with it, you know,
Right.
it might be a little bit harsher, you know, but in this situation, I think because of Suad's sense of humor, she's really experienced some interesting things, and she's handled these situations with humor at times, you know, I mean, really like deep emotion, like frustration and rage,
Yeah.
but, you know, sarcasm coming out in that moment. And so instead of like crying, you're just laughing so hard as you're reading this book. Um, and so I loved that. Like the moment I read it, I just was like, oh, this is something that I would wanna that I would want to take on. So I literally have the book right here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so excited about this because I think Suad has it's in her spirit. So Suad, you're the way not only you know you tell stories, the way you live your life, the energy, the passion, um, uh, your response to situations is unique, I think. And so I remember one particular story. I don't know, Suad, if you remember it. It's not in Sharon and My Mother-in-Law, but it's a story where you were traveling with all these writers from Palfest and you were in Hebron. Do you remember this story?
I was traveling with
With Palfest,
see, yes,
yes, yeah, and
Ah,
you had an encounter with a soldier. And normally, I don't know if you want to tell the story, but if you don't remember it, just your reaction was so different than I think most people would be, where they would just get very angry. And you turned it into a learning moment, an embarrassing moment for him. And do you want to share that story?
well, to tell you the truth, I'm not so sure which point you're referring to, but all I know that people love the story of the dog, the passports, the
Okay,
document.
yes.
Another great one.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I happen to have a little dog, and I once was stuck not finding. I don't want to make a long story. Eventually, I ended up going to an Israeli vet. And at the end of the check, after checking the dog, she comes with a document, and she tells me, "Do you have a photo?" So I said, "My photo?" No, the dog's photo. So I said, "No, I don't. I'm not like the Americans who carry their children's photos in my pocket." Anyway, to make a long story short, we came out of that office with Noura having a passport. And she says, don't forget to take it to the airport with you. You can use it at the airport for her to travel. So here I am having a conversation with the dog. And it was at a time where I couldn't cross the Qalandia, let alone going to the Tel Aviv airport. None of the Palestinians in the West Bank or Gaza were allowed to use the airport since 2000, actually, up till today. So here I am with a dog that can go to Jerusalem and get to the airport. So I was entertained by the idea, and I decided to go to the checkpoint and just have Noura sit in my lap. And it was at a time where none of the, we Palestinians have blue plates, the Israelis have yellow plates. So the soldiers from a distance figured out that this is a Palestinian car. So 3 soldiers ran to me and said, "Do you have a permit for your car?" I said, "No, I don't have a permit." "Do you have a permit yourself?" "No, I don't have a permit." "Well, how do you expect to go to Jerusalem?" I said, "You haven't met Noura yet." And I asked the dog to come, and I say, "I want you to be introduced to my dog, Noura." And I take the document and show it to them, and they were totally entertained. And at the same time saying, "What's this crazy woman we have in here?" So I said, "This is Noura, this is his passport, and I happen to be her driver." And lucky enough, the soldier had a bit of sense of humor, and he let me go.
Wow.
Anyway, which brings me to a thing that I want to say, actually. Sharon and my mother-in-law, and maybe Cherien can comment on this as well. In 2001, it was easy for me to be funny and make fun of the situation. I think partly because we had hope that something might happen, that we may come to an agreement with the Israelis, a peace agreement. Somehow I was lighter. When I wrote my last book about 1948, and Cherien said that as well, it was difficult for me to joke. Again, there were funny moments, funny comments, but 1948 is exactly like Gaza today. It is very heavy, and I don't think that we ever had the time to mourn, had the time to heal. And the problem with us Palestinians is that the occupation has been going on from 48 up till today, and we had no moment of healing. And look at Gaza now. For the last 2 years, actually, my reaction was silence, complete silence. With Sharon and my mother, I wrote and joked. With Mother of Strangers, I wrote and joked a little bit. Now I can neither write nor joke. And it has taken our spirit completely, because we find ourselves in a world that doesn't understand us, at least the politicians. I should not generalize, because we do have a lot of support from people themselves. But here we are trying to explain ourselves to the democratic Western world that claims to be democratic, while they're giving weapons to Israel, all of them, Italy, France, Germany, United States, Britain, Australia. This is the democratic world. So you are living in a moment where all your values and human values have collapsed in front of you. The international law has collapsed in front of you, which is something that the Palestinians always believe, that maybe the world community will be a little bit fair. And here, in spite of all what Israel did, we find that America joins a war with Israel. We find France defending Israel planes and what have you. So what do you say to this world? Really, I find myself running out of words, and whatever I say is not convincing even to me. Thank you.
You know, it's so interesting, Suad. I feel exactly what you're saying. I think I have also run out of words, to be honest. And maybe that's why it's good that cinema is the language of emotion. And that's why my film is so emotional. And in so many ways, you know, of course, I started writing this movie long before October the 7th. I wrote it with an intention to heal, with an intention for us to see 1948, to recognize, to try to get the world to recognize what Palestinians lost and what we have endured for 8 decades, very patiently endured, I might add, very patiently with compassion and love and so much, you know, like grace. But the world doesn't see any of that because our humanity is just subverted. You know, we're not allowed to be seen as human. The world has dehumanized us across, you know, all of these different, you know, media platforms, film, television, news, all of it. And they very successfully have dehumanized us, therefore allowing this moment. I really think that our dehumanization in Western media is what is allowing this genocide to unfold and take place.
Yeah.
And therefore, to me, storytelling is a matter of survival for us. We have to tell our stories. We don't have a choice. It's that important, you know? But I find myself with you running out of ways to talk about this situation. Like just talk, just have or even write about it in any kind of a intelligent way on social media. Like how much more do we need to explain ourselves? How much more do we need to beg the world to do something or say something or speak up? I almost feel a sense of humiliation that we have to keep doing this. That we have to keep
Absolutely.
showing the world our agony, we have to show the world our agony, and they're still refusing to speak up. I mean, one does, even when you're a funny person, which I'm not, by the way, but you are, even when you're a funny person, you do lose your sense of humor in this kind of a situation. I mean, where do we go? You know, where do we go from here just as people?
Yeah. This I agree with you about the sense of humiliation. I don't have patience anymore to explain myself, to explain that we existed on this land, to explain that we have been spelled out of our jobs, out of our work, out of our homeland, to explain that what's happening in Gaza. I mean, every revolution in the world, when the German occupied France and France resisted, they are seen as heroes. In South Africa, heroes. In Vietnam, heroes. We are the only people who are supposed to sit under occupation and throw roses on our occupier. This is what the world wants from us.
Right.
They don't want a human reaction. We are being human by reacting to being second, third, fourth class citizens.
Right.
And they are defending apartheid, they are defending. But at the same time, I must say something positive, which is my nature. Really, I think that Israel went so far with its cruelty in Gaza that it exposed itself. Not only that, thanks also to many Jewish communities who have come out and expressed their support for the Palestinians and the Europeans, the people in Europe who came out, young people especially, who came to say, what about humanity? What about our humanity? So I think that even an event like in New York, you know what? I was happy because I saw these young people realizing that all of these issues are connected. Black lives matter, women lives matter, Palestinian lives matter. So I think that this younger generation, and I hope I am not mistaken, but they realized how brutal Israel is. What does it mean to have a state that made war with 6 countries in the last 2 years? 2
Yeah.
years.
Yeah,
So
I
anyway,
completely agree with you. Like I think that the world and you said it, you know, I think what we're fighting here is fascism and political, you know, political entities, governments, um, indoctrination. Like but you have a lot of people waking up right now. So the
mm,
the good news, like the silver lining, even though we're paying an unbelievably heavy price, the one thing that's coming from this is that people are waking up and people are
right,
seeing the situation for what it is. For far too long, everyone normalized Palestinian suffering. Everyone
right.
normalized the occupation. If Palestinians were suffering, then something would be wrong. You know what I mean? Like it was made so normalized. So now it
Yeah,
just feels like everyone is seeing the brutality of the situation. They're like occupation is far too polite a word for the violence
yeah,
that Palestinians endure every day, you know, even before the last 2 years, you know, before
Right,
the
yeah,
events of
right.
the last 2 years. So
Mhm.
yeah, I do think that we're starting to see what the next generation is going to do. Like, and I think we saw that in New York a few days ago with Mamdani's like huge win.
yeah,
That's a really big historic moment that someone who ran on like a really powerful like platform, really defending Palestinian rights and freedom and justice, won the Democratic nomination.
yeah,
Great
despite
moment,
all
really.
the funding from AIPAC and all the attacks on him and the big
Yeah,
money against him. And he wouldn't have won without a large Jewish vote for him. So, there is a strong progressive Jewish voice in New York that's saying enough. And
yeah,
so that gives some hope, but of course the forces are huge and they're multiple. And what you're talking about, what you're creating also speaks to the urgency of this moment. And how are we going to remember this time? Where are Palestinians going to be in the future? What does the future look like for us? I think cultural production is part of this conversation, and a very important one, to uplift these voices, because I think it's clear that in Palestine, Palestinian poets and author and writers and artists have been targeted, and musicians, and they've always been targeted. But in Gaza, we see it clearly, targeted, killed, all these cultural centers, all the universities. Um, there's something so brutal about this moment, um, that perhaps, Cherien, someone like you, who is the daughter of a Nakba survivor, and who, has the skills and has grown up in the US, can take the story forward. I mean, we are, as a Palestinian society, a large percentage of us are still under occupation, are still living in refugee camps, whether in Palestine or in other countries, but there's also many Palestinians worldwide. And we are part of a collective, and telling our story together, I think, is partly also what you're doing. But the urgency of this moment, for all of us to be telling it in our own way, I think, is important, and to support people like Suad, who continue to be in the occupied territories, who at this moment, um, is finding it very hard to find hope. I mean, we're all in that, but I think we all are also in this collective where we need to uplift each other and support each other, and tell our story to the world. I just think, of all that you have both brought, to this, to raising awareness, to educating, to celebrating life and love, and to telling the Palestinian story, is just so critical. And I just want to thank both of you for that. Um,
thank you.
in closing, I'm wondering if you wanted to say anything more before we close this conversation. I know that we'll all be looking forward to seeing both Sharon and My Mother-in-Law and All That's Left of You, and to continuing engaging with the art and everything that you write, Suad. We look forward to a hopeful moment when you will write again.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to thank you and thank Cherien. Cherien, I am extremely curious about how a book turns into a film.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
am really anxiously waiting, but I have total trust and confidence in your work. So I am not worried. I am curious.
Yeah, I'm excited to share it with you. I will tell you that I am focusing on that period of time where Ramallah was reoccupied and where you had to rescue your mother-in-law from her home where she lived and bring her to your house and survive 42 days under curfew. And so I'm focusing the film because I can't tell all of the stories, but I'm going to take stories from the other time periods and put them in that time period. So you're going to see some restructuring, you're going to see some things, and it is a very interesting process to see how a book is adapted. And movies are very particular structure.
Yeah.
So
Architects, I still consider myself an architect. We interfere in everything and we spoil people's life. But I am holding my architect self away from you. So
well, no, I
I
look
will
forward
just
to
go to
sharing.
the movie and see it. No interference before that.
I look forward to you interfering when I finally have a draft to show you. And it's not interfering, it's I look forward to your feedback.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I'm also very much looking forward to this coming out. Thank you both. It has been such a delight and a great honor for me to be speaking with both of you, to host you here on Occupied Thoughts. Thank you so much, Suad and Cherien, for joining me today. And
Thank you.
I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to this episode of Occupied Thoughts. Please make sure to check out the Foundation for Middle East Peace FMEP website, www.fmep.org, for resources related to this podcast, lots of other rich content related to Palestine and Israel. And please make sure you're subscribed to this podcast to stay up to date. You can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Spotify. And you can also watch video versions of our podcasts, including this one on YouTube. And with that, I'm Hilary Rantisi signing off until next episode of FMEP's Occupied Thoughts. Thank you, everyone.